Hello and welcome to Chapter 13, video lecture, Managing the Human Resources Aspects of the Project. So let's get started. Our agenda for today are the following four things. The first is understanding power and influence. Second, managing the project team. Then managing the stakeholder relationships. And finally, managing conflict. So these are all aspects of managing the human resources or people aspects of the team. Again, the project lifecycle, we are in the executing phase, and it's one of four areas that we're going to look at in executing, and it's the human aspect. Okay, managing the HR aspects of the project. It is important for project managers to focus on the human resources or people aspects of the project for the following reasons. Projects are performed by people, that is the project team. For people, the project stakeholders. The way they interact has a huge bearing on project outcomes. It is instrumental that high performing teams tend to perform well and low performing or dysfunctional teams don't. So it is a key focus. Project managers do not normally perform the work of the project themselves. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they'll have a dual role, but oftentimes they're achieving their work through others. So there needs to be a key focus on the project team and the human resources of the project. Now, project managers have a special challenge in that they often lack the positional power that other managers possess. Oftentimes, team members do not report or work directly for them, but they work for some other manager. So, this lack of positional power can be difficult. Therefore, the use of influence is very important. Project managers need to very much understand how to influence others. Which brings us to our topic is understanding power and influence. That a project manager needs to have a very strong understanding and ability to use these concepts. So let's look at these. Now, first of all, is power. Power is the source, it is the capacity. So, having power allows you to influence or facilitates your influence of others to change their attitude or behavior and is based upon the following sources. So, research has been done which indicates that there's five really sources of power: expertise, power, referent power, legitimate, reward, and coercive power. And let's just run through each one. Expertise is people's perception of the leader's knowledge and expertise. So if you're viewed as being knowledgeable or being having expertise about something, that gives you power. Uh, Referent is based on people's desire to be identified with you. So it is people want to follow you because of your interpersonal skills, your charisma, your there's a certain um, leadership skills or presence which leads to referent power. Legitimate power is based on the leader's formal position within the organization. So this is your position, your job title will give you legitimate power. The higher the level of the job in the organization, the more power. Reward is power based on the leader's ability to provide resources, pay raises, promotions, etc. So that's a reward power. The ability to give rewards um, increases your power. And finally, there's coercive power, which is based on the leader's ability to penalize or penalize others or withdraw privileges. And that's known as coercive power, to be able to punish someone. Now, it's fact of life. That's what we described just on the other slide, was that project managers usually have limited legitimate power. So that middle power is kind of limited. That's part of the problem or part of the challenge of being a project manager. So the question is, which sources of power should project managers strive to use? So just think about that for a moment, even pause this video and think it over. Now, my comments on it are as follows. Oftentimes, people new to projects will see rewards and coercive power as being uh, the ones that projects should strive to use. Like, why not? If you can reward someone for something, you can give them a bonus or you can give them higher pay. Yeah, we'll be able to get them to do what we want. And likewise, coercive. If we can punish them, if we can fire them or threaten to fire them, demote them, that's certainly we can get people to do what we want that way, or so they think. The problem is with those two is that they both have problems. Rewards are limited. Throughout the planning phase, you probably noticed, this common theme of oftentimes budget is limited. We don't have a lot of money to throw around at people and get them to do things. Oftentimes, there is little or no budget for that on a project. So if you rely solely on rewards, you're going to run out of power if you unless you have a really big budget, and most don't. Coercive power is very difficult. It's not to say there are not instances, or there are instances where um, it is necessary to punish, but those should be things of last resort. Your first reaction should often be to develop and to correct and to provide feedback and so on. If you're become the manager who just punishes people in order to get them or threaten them to get them to do things, team members will end up not following you. Probably will want to be on other projects, and um, you're going to find it pretty difficult if that's your number one power. So reward and coercive are lesser used. In other words, expertise and referent are the things that you should look to develop. Look to develop your expertise. Look to be viewed as someone who is knowledgeable, that knows what they're doing, is competent, is ethical, is consistent. Those are things that are associated with expertise. Referent, be a leader, be honest, be someone who does what they means what they say what they mean. They be the be that person that you want that you would want to follow. Then you will have people wanting to be associated with you, which is and be identified with you, which is referent power. So those are the things that you want to work on. Um, and then that leads us to influence. The reason to develop power is to be able to influence, is that the more power you have, the more influence. Influence is the exercise of power to bring about change. And as we noted earlier, because of the lack of legitimate power, influence is really how the project manager gets things done in many cases. So it's very important. Now, there's various ways to influence others. This again is described on page 153 of the textbook. Um, few of the ways are: one is engaging others in rational or logical explanations. So convincing them with sound reasoning. That's one of the ways you can influence. Now, notice that if you try to reason with someone, you're more likely to convince them if they view you as having expertise, if you have expertise power, or if you have referent power, right? So those powers will facilitate your ability to convince others or to influence others through rational or logical explanations. Another way to influence is inspire others with a higher purpose or vision. If you can inspire them to say, "This is where we're going. We are doing this project because it helps people. It will help raise people out of poverty, or it'll give them this new product that they didn't have before." That's something that referent power will help with that. Interpersonal skills and acts of friendship or kindness is another way to influence. Involving others in the planning process and seeking out their advice. And finally, demonstrating the advantage of cooperation. Again, all of those will work better if you have um, expertise and referent power. So I encourage you to think about that very, very, very carefully. Project managers should be continually considering and developing their sources of power in order to increase their ability to influence others. So very, very key. So at this point, please turn to the case study update, Understanding Power and Influence, in your textbook. Just pause the video and then come on back when you're done. Okay, so moving on, another thing that is done is managing the project team. So managing the project team's activities. You've got a lot of work going on, and it's key to manage them. An effective approach, though, sometimes we get into a scenario where we say, well, I'm a micromanager, or I'm hands off, or so on. You'll have your own style, and you'll think that that's the way you should do it for every single team member. And there's a fallacy with that, because each team member may need a different type of management style in order to be effective. So the approach is to vary the management style depending upon the expertise level of each team member, as follows. If the team member has a low level of expertise, it's best to use a very directive management style. That is, lay out what they need to do and check with them constantly. As they become as they gain a higher level of expertise, maybe they become kind of medium level, you can start moving to a coaching management style. So you more coach them, sit down with them, review their to-do list, give them tips, but you're not giving them direct orders. That's a coaching management style. As team members become even more, gain more expertise, become medium to high level, you can be supportive. Where the main thing here is to, instead of laying things out for them or reviewing their work, you can be there to support them if they run into problems. And finally, for those team members who gain a high level of expertise, and there may be many team members that never get to this level, but some who reach such a high level, basically you can use a delegating management style where you just give them what you want to do and let them go. That's called a delegating management style. Now, this is a really important model to consider because it allows you to spend the right amount of time with each team member, and it also fits your style to what they need. When somebody is at a low level of expertise, they really want direction. They don't know what to do, and they appreciate it. As people are learning, coaching and support is more needed and appreciated. For someone who's at the top of their game, they just want to do what they're going to do, and they don't need the manager to tell them or coach or support them, because they are completely self-sufficient. So this is a key thing to consider. Please go to the case study update, Managing the Project Team's Activities, and come on back here when you're done. Okay, the next step is building the team's capabilities. Now, another thing, this is a little different from what we just about management styles. This is about building capabilities. In addition to managing the team's activities on the project manager should also build the team's capabilities. That is, develop the team. Teams are always in constant states of development. We just saw in the previous slide how certain team members start with a low level of expertise and hopefully get to a high level of expertise. Well, that happens because we are, as managers, as project managers, doing things to help that development along. The textbook describes some specific ways that teams' capabilities can be developed or enhanced. And if you turn to page 157, you can review that. But here's a few ideas. Team members can undergo training, either formally within the classroom or online course, or informally. There can be on-the-job mentoring. You can encourage that, where your senior project team members coach the junior project members. Regular feedback should be provided, particularly for team members with lower levels of expertise. This may take the form of day-to-day informal feedback or regular scheduled formal appraisals. The project manager should also look to create a positive environment for the project team to perform effectively. Team building activities can also be done. They can be either formal, such as arranged trips to events or those types of things, or informal, just taking the team out for lunch or something like that, or a coffee, or some kind of an informal gathering, which is a way of building the teams. But the project manager will, the effective project manager will realize that it's this building of the project team's capabilities, both at the individual skill level, but also at their ability to work together and through that environment is very, very key. Again, please go to your textbook and review the Building the Project Team's Capabilities case study update, and then come on back here when you're done. Managing the stakeholder relationships. In addition to the project team, the project manager also frequently interacts with various stakeholders. That's a lot of what a project manager does. The stakeholder management plan was developed during planning, and it's something that we should review. We should use this as a guide and ensure that we actively manage these relationships. Remember, the stakeholder management plan had a column in it which talked about our plan to manage the stakeholders. We should be ensuring during the executing phase that we actually do that what we said we were going to do, we actually do. And if it's something that's not working or needs to be modified, we update it. We make changes to it and do it. And as with project team members, the use of power and influence is very important. So you can also influence stakeholders. Again, please go to the case study update in your textbook, Managing the Stakeholder Relationships, and then come on back here when you're done. Okay, our next subject, the final subject, is managing conflict. The goal of creating something unique in a finite period of time with a limited budget can lead to conflict. And so, in other words, projects, because of their nature, their constrained nature, often leads to conflict. Now, some level of conflict is productive for a team. It's actually healthy. That is, if there is no conflict, like if there was zero, none, then some team members may not be adequately engaged. There's something wrong. If there's zero conflict, that means either team members are apathetic, or maybe they're being dominated by someone or some people on the team. So that would be something to look into. However, on the other hand, excessive conflict is not good. If there is outright hostility, name calling, bullying, you can't have that. That's something. So it's that a moderate, small level of conflict is relatively good. Therefore, an effective conflict management approach is needed. Now, using the following conflict management model, there are two characteristics of any conflict. Anytime there's a disagreement on the team, it's useful to look at these two characteristics. One is the importance of the situation. What is causing the conflict? Might be highly important. It might also be fairly trivial. Many of the conflicts we run into are about minor issues, and it's not we start to get caught up in the right and wrong, and wanting to win every argument and so on. So the key thing is to look at, well, how important is this situation? And then also look at how important is it to maintain the relationship with the other person or people involved in the conflict. So the two measures: importance of the situation and importance of maintaining the relationship with the other parties of the conflict. So that needs to be assessed. And once these have been determined, a suitable conflict management approach may be used. And here's a summary of it. Again, the textbook describes much more detail on this, but it's basically saying let's look at the first four rows. First of all, there's four combinations. There's high importance and high importance of the situation, high importance of the relationship. Well, this is the most the conflict that really needs to be considered, because it's really important, whatever the issue is, and it's somebody that you want to maintain a high relationship with them. In that case, a collaborating conflict management approach is advised. And what I mean by collaborating is to look at the problem and try to work out some kind of reasonable solution. It might be something new. It might be, if we really kind of look at both sides, we can come up with something, that might will address both of our concerns. It's often referred to as a attempt to find a win-win solution. Now, here's another one is the second row, the low importance of situation. So the unimportant situation, but a high importance of a relationship. These are the ones that we often get caught on and that we make errors on. We want to win an argument with somebody that we need to work with, and it's really not an important issue. In that case, the best option is usually accommodating. Just say, okay, sounds good. If it's not important, why fight? Just it's better to preserve the relationship. So that's accommodating. If it's a highly important situation, but it's the importance of the relationship is low, it's not somebody you're going to need to work with, well, that often the best conflict management approach is directing. Let's just do it. It's really important. And the importance of the relationship is low. If you're involved in if you're speeding on the highway, and a police officer pulls you over and you argue with them, from the police officer's point of view, they will use a directing conflict management approach, which is from their perspective, it's a highly important situation and they really aren't trying to be your friend at that point. So they're using a directing conflict management approach, and it's normally appropriate. If we have a low situation which is of low importance, and the importance of the relationship is low, those are things that we shouldn't even be involved in. We should avoid those. We should walk away. It's not important, and it's not somebody that we need to get involved in. Oftentimes you see these battles going on social media and Facebook or others of these people arguing with each other. Oftentimes, I don't even know if it's anything that important. They're just arguing for the sake of arguing. Best just to avoid those. And then finally, the last is there's when it's in the middle. Sometimes things are moderately important, and the relationship is moderately important too. That's where a compromising conflict management approach can be taken, which is if both sides give a little bit. If we're trying to find a middle solution, we'll compromise in the middle. So that's called compromising. So these are the 5 conflict management approaches. And it's something to really consider because these are the tools to help you manage conflict. Again, the last case study update is managing conflict. So please pause this and review that in the text. Okay, and so hopefully that case study gave you some ideas on the conflict management approaches. Here's the references for the chapter. That's the end of the video lecture. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.